All right, peace. ETM Hotep, welcome to the Sesh channel. This is your brother Wujao. And before I begin, I always like to just verify, if anyone who is tuned in, to just verify that I can be heard loud and clear. Before I begin today's quick lesson for today. And as promised, we made an announcement that we will be doing these quick lessons on our channel just to get people caught up on information that we've covered one or two or three or more times in the past. We do understand that there are new people that may become familiar with our channel, with the information itself, and they may not be familiar with the previous presentations that we've done, although they're all available in our archives. So definitely encourage people to definitely browse through our archives, and you'll see the different titles of videos that cover a wide range of information dealing with ancient Egypt, but more so focused on the language aspect of ancient Egypt. And our primary focus being the language is due to the fact that when you study a foreign culture from your own, the best and most effective way to do so is by way of its language. Language is the DNA of culture. And in order to understand a culture, to have a more intimate knowledge of a culture, you're going to have to gain competency in the language of that culture. All of the worldview, state of mind of the people that are a part of a culture, that's embedded within their language on how they communicate with each other and how they communicate it to the world. So ancient Egypt is no different. And so those who are interested in the study of ancient Egypt, basically Egyptology, you will definitely have to familiarize yourself with the language. Now, obviously, it will depend on your degree of interest. There are people with different degrees of interest in Kemet, ancient Egypt, Tawi, Tawi, by whatever name that people choose to call it. There's different levels of interest. And so obviously, according to those levels, will directly reflect your pursuit and how far you go in learning. All right. So just want to get started on this All right, peace, peace. Hopefully, I can be heard. So, the enemy cat, can I be heard? Can you hear me? Peace, peace. Can I be heard?
Two.
All right, so I can be heard. So that was a
Yes, I
long,
can hear from you.
very long delay, and I don't think there was no stand-ins. All right, so let's try this again. We have a few technical difficulties here, but we're gonna try this again. We're gonna get started again. So I could be heard. Peace to Octo Thorpe, and I appreciate you saying yes. You can hear me. All right, so we're gonna start this over again. All right, we're gonna start it from the top. But MK, you can hear me.
Two.
All right, excellent. So, all right, so welcome to the Seshu channel. This is your brother Wujao and also Sanet Imiket. Both of us, we're here today. We're going live, and we are going to give a quick lesson on the linguistic sign and what is a word. All right. This particular topic we've covered many times before. We've done presentations on it. We've done a few live streams where it came up in discussions. So definitely check out the archives for the previous shows. So this time I decided to go over it again because there are new people who are just now becoming familiar with us, our channel, and then there are a small few people that would like to have a review and go over this information again. So this is kind of information that doesn't get too old, and we've gone over it, and I don't mind going over it several times because it is very important to understand. It's something that is taken for granted, something that is not known or not aware of, but it's very important. It's a key element in all things linguistic. Things linguistic, I mean, communication period in general. Trying to communicate to one another, trying to analyze language, trying to get meanings from one to another, etc., etc. The linguistic sign is a very important key in all of that. Okay. And so I definitely don't mind covering this information as many times as I need to so that more and more people will have an understanding. All right. So for those who in the chat tuned in, I apologize. We had a few technical difficulties starting out, but now I think that everything is fine and you all can hear me. So if I could just get another confirmation from the chat to make sure everything that I'm saying is being heard, you can hear me loud and clear. So if you all can let me know that, we'll continue and move forward. And also spread the word that, people that may be interested in this who have not subscribed or hit the notification bell, they might not even know that we're live and having this discussion. All right, so make sure you spread the word. But anyone in the chat, if you all can verify for me that I am being heard, then we'll move forward. All right. And I'm just going to wait. But let me get, just to kind of buy a little bit of time, you have any input on this particular topic and how many times we have gone over it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, we have actually gone over it quite a number of times. It's in different videos. I know you've gone over it like I'm just putting a rough guess, probably 8 times or something on that. And we and in class, obviously, we've talked about this. I actually borrowed from your stuff and did did part of the video that I made for the course for the decipherment. I took part of that as well. So we've done it so many times that we actually call we call the the triangle that you normally use to explain this stuff. We started calling it the Wujao language trinity or something like that. So so
All right.
we've gone over it so many times, but I think it for us it's good, but I think for most people because they don't really focus on languages, if even though people speak a language or languages, um, most people really don't think about the whole concept of or what is happening behind the scene in that sense to really grasp it. So I still think obviously you can't go there's you can never go over it enough times. So it's good.
All right. Excellent. So again, just as Emiket just said, this topic we've gone over it many times in the archive. So, and then each time, I may explain it, elaborate more or less, depending on, which video that you actually see me have this discussion. So today's gonna be no different, but it's a very, very important principle in language. Period. People shy away from the word linguistic because linguistic is an actual discipline. Linguistics, it's a discipline, an academic discipline and things. And so people tend to say, okay, linguistics is over there. It's something that is over there. And if I'm not interested in it, then I can leave it over there. And what I'm about to discuss today is called something called the linguistic sign. And it's something that is used by speakers of all languages. Okay, so it's not something that you can put over there, on a shelf. It is something that is intricate in our modes of communication with one another. All human beings who speak a language um, is involved with the linguistic sign. Okay, so that's why it's very, very important. So I don't want to word it like this is an important thing for linguistics because people put linguistics over there to the side. This is an important thing for communication. Period. Okay, period. All right. And if you're not familiar with it, you will understand and see why I say that. So let's just dive in. I want to say greetings and peace to everyone in the chat. And again, spread the word if you know anybody who's interested in this particular topic, whether they are hanging out with us live now or in the archive. Make sure you definitely share and spread the word. Okay, so I do see we have a few people that are tuned in, um, and appreciate that. So I'm just gonna dive on into the subject. We are going to get the screen really big here. Okay, so and this is part of our Learning Egyptian Hieroglyphics series. All right, now we're going to try to title our videos so that people will know which videos are a part of the similar series. And we've done so already. We've created playlists on our YouTube channel to kind of categorize the different videos. So make sure you look at our playlist and you'll see which videos are similar to each other. Okay, so this is part of our Learning Egyptian Hieroglyphic series. Now, for those who are actually interested in studying the ancient Egyptian language, we refer to as Rani Kemet, and the writing system we refer to as Sesh, Medew, Netcher, or the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system, then we have a class and course available, a beginner's class and course available. You don't have to have any prior knowledge at all about the language, even about Egypt. And obviously, it would be good if you did, but it's not required. All right. But we have a course. It's open for signups, and the way the course is designed, it's a self-paced design course. All right, and it's available on Sable University website, and hopefully, Emicat can post a link into the chat so that you all can check that out. So, what we do here live, we give quick lessons, quick overviews about different subjects concerning the language. So, nothing very elaborate or exhaustive. That's reserved for the actual classes. Okay, so keep that in mind. Bear that in mind as we have this discussion. All right. So, diving in. So, today's lesson is about the linguistic sign, and we're going to answer the question of what is a word? Okay, what is a word? Now, that may seem like an odd thing to ask because we grow up, we speak a language, and we use what we think are words every day, all day. As I'm speaking to you all, I'm speaking words, and we'll say, hey, listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. So it's weird to even ask a question, what is a word, when we've been using it all this time. It's like, well, wait a minute. If you're going to ask what is a word, you should have asked that when you were, 5 years old, when you started work, started using the word. That's when you ask why late and ask about that. It seems a bit silly, right? But it's actually not. Okay. And I'm going to go into that. So our quick lesson, the objective is to explain what is a linguistic sign, what is a word, and we'll be able to answer that. And then we're going to get into or touch on translation. What is a translation? What does it mean to translate something? Okay, so we're going to briefly touch on that because it's kind of related to all of this. And then time permits, we'll have a quick Q&A, all right, from the chat. I'll be able to engage the chat. So for now, I'm not going to engage the chat too much. I just want to share this information. If you have questions about anything I say, definitely remember it or jot it down, and then you can ask it, and we'll engage the chat or open the panel. Okay, so just gonna dive on in. Now, the validity of this question first. Let me let's back up. Let's start here. So, communication period. And remember what I said before. When you say linguistics or linguistics, people think of a professional discipline, somebody who's a linguist and things like that. And it seems like they're separated from it. Like linguistics is sitting over there and I'm over here. So let's look at this. Let's cloak this conversation under just a general understanding of communication period, because that's what everybody does. All right. So what is communication? Basically, communication is a successful sharing or making concepts common. That's what communication is. All right. So the goal of language, what's the goal of language? The goal of language is to transmit meaning from one person to another, or to many people, like I'm doing right now. I'm speaking, but I'm speaking to whoever's listening to me in the chat. That's available in the chat. All right. That's the goal of language, to transmit meaning. Now, concepts or meaning must be clothed in a form, be it sound or writing, in order to be transmitted. So now the reason why that is, and that's so obvious, that should be so obvious, and the reason should be obvious, is because as human beings, we're not telepathic. We're not telepathic creatures. So in order for us to transmit a meaning that is in my head, in my mind, over to the next person or to many people, I have to clothe it or put it inside of a vehicle or clothe it in a form and then transmit it. And I transmit that by way of sound or in writing. Okay, that's the general way that we communicate. All right. And then obviously for sign language, we have body language and we have sign language as well. But in general, I'm speaking about sound, speaking, and writing, which you actually see. Okay. So that is very basic and common to everyone. Now, what is a language? Now we're going to get into a language, and I make the statement here: a language is a system of signs. But we're going to get into what is a sign. So what is this linguistic sign? Now, the question is, what is a sign? And it should be not so as to not be confusing. We should ask the question, what is a linguistic sign? But like I said, I'm purposely shying away from the word linguistic sign because, again, people think that linguistics is something that is separated from them, and it's just not. All right. So what is a sign? A sign is an entity that's made up of three elements. Okay, three elements. You see these three circles on the screen. And you see the two hands holding two of them. And so that's to give the visual impression that it's like a coin, like two sides of the same coin. Okay, like we have heads and tails on a quarter. All right. But a sign is an entity that's composed of three elements. So the first element is form. All right. And the second element is meaning. And the third element is the link between the two, between form and meaning. That's gluing them or tying them together. You can see it as glue, crazy glue, gorilla glue, or a rope that's tying it together. And in the coin analogy, just imagine it being the rim, the edge of the coin. You got the heads and tails and then the rim. All right. Now, to explain each one real quick, the form side is called the signifier. Okay. The signifier. And that consists of a sound pattern if you're speaking, or written pattern if you're writing. Now, the organs that we use for sound, we use our ears. And for writing, we use our eyes. Simple enough. Now, the other side is meaning. Meaning is referred to as the signified, that which is signified. So we have the signifier, then we have that which is signified. Okay. And on the meaning side, it consists of the concept, the psychological, mental concept. All right. And the word concept itself means to grasp in the mind, as you see on the screen. All right. And so we have those two. And then we have the glue or the rope that connects the two, which is the link. All three of these elements make up what's called a linguistic sign. All right. Sign for short. Because people, like I said, I don't want to scare people away with the word linguistics. All right. Now, back to communication. Remember what I said about communication? You have successful communication and then unsuccessful communication or miscommunication. That's what we like to refer to it as, communicating or miscommunicating. And just by the way, as a side note, about 90% of problems in the world, I'm going to say 90%. Now, I haven't done a scientific study on this. This is just my life's experience, observation. About 80 to 90% of problems in the world are due to some form of miscommunication. Some form of miscommunication. We can narrow down to relationships. I think everybody will pretty much agree with me that a lot of problems in relationships are due to miscommunication. All right. And you can expand that to all different areas of life. All right. But we have two two things. We have successful communication and we have miscommunication. So what is successful communication? So this is the process. This is a basic general process of successful communication. So we have two people, person A and person B. So what happens is person A will encode meaning, which is they take a concept that they're thinking of in their mind, in their psyche. They will encode that meaning into a form. And that form, again, being either sound or written, something written, a sound pattern or a written pattern. If I'm writing a letter or if I'm speaking, recording a message. Okay. And then what they'll do is they'll transmit that form to person B. Now, when they encode meaning into a form, it becomes a sign. It becomes a sign. And they transmit that sign over to person B. And then person B receives that sign from person A, and then they decode the form to extract meaning. Okay, this sounds very, very basic. This sounds, this should be very, very obvious. But this is the process. That's what's happening. Now, in order for that process to be successful, in order for person B to extract the meaning, person A and person B must be in possession of the same sign. Okay, I'm gonna repeat that. In order for person A and person B to have a successful communication, when person A packs that meaning into a form and creates the sign that's to be transmitted, when they transmit it over to person A for them to decode and extract the meaning, person A and B must share the same sign. They must have the same sign in their psyche, stored in their mind. That's the only way that it will be successful. Now, as far as miscommunication or unsuccessful communication, that happens when person B fails to extract the meaning that was packed and put inside the form to create the sign. So it's a mismatch of signs is what results in miscommunication. Okay? Person A means one thing, person B think they mean something totally different. Okay, I hope everybody follows that. It's like, but what I meant was, we hear that a lot. That's not what I mean. That's not what I meant. I meant this. And the person mistook it, mischaracterized it, or misunderstood. That's the way we describe miscommunication. Okay? So what does that mean then? So what it means is that language itself. So when I say I speak English, or somebody else says I speak Spanish, or somebody else may say I speak French, what people are saying is that I am part of a speech community of English signs, or French signs, or Spanish signs. So anyone who's a member of a speech community, which is, we say, I speak a language, what you're saying is that I share a set of signs with other people that also share these same signs with me. So I'm a part of an English speaking pool of signs. So I can talk to other English speakers. Why? Because we all share the same signs in our mind. That's why we're able to understand one another. And if I speak English and I'm trying to communicate to a person that only speaks Spanish, they're not going to understand me because they don't share the same signs. But the way we describe that in everyday conversation, we'll say, hey, I speak English, you speak Spanish, you don't understand me because you speak a different language. See, we say you speak a different language. But when we say different language, we're saying a different set of signs. All right. So hopefully everybody follows with that. So now let's move over to some examples. So remember the statement, a language is a system of signs. So English is a system of signs. Spanish is a system of signs. Kiswahili is a system of signs. French is a system of signs. All right. So here are some examples of signs within a few of these languages. So we're going to start with English. So in English, we have an English sign. And this sign is made up of the three elements that I said. And on the form side, we're going to put the sound pattern of elephant. That's what you see here at the top. We're going to put the written pattern of ELEPHANT. So this is the sound pattern and the written pattern. And either one of these are on the side of the form. This makes up the element of the form of the linguistic sign. On the meaning side, what we conceive or conceptualize, which means to grasp in the mind, what we are conceptualizing is a large gray animal, big ears, a long snout, ivory tusk, and it weighs a lot. Okay? That's what we're conceiving in our mind. Now, all of that, when you glue that together, you glue the form and the meaning together, which is the link, or we could describe it as a rope. It becomes an English sign. All right. Now, these signs, what I'm calling a sign, these linguistic signs, although they're made up of three elements that as I explained, we tend to carry them and lean more heavily on the form of the sign. So elephant, we'll say the word elephant and we'll call it a word. And this is what a word actually is, which brings us back to why I even asked the question, what is a word? The linguistic sign, what is a word? What we're calling words are actually linguistic signs. All right. So that's an example of an English sign. The way we'll describe it, we'll say the word elephant. But we have to understand that that word elephant is really a pack, a composite thing of three things. All right, let's move on to an example of a Swahili sign. In the language of Kiswahili, when I say the language of Kiswahili, I'm talking about a pool of Kiswahili signs. So on the form side for this example, we have the sound pattern ndovu. Ndovu, that's the sound pattern. The written pattern is Ndovu. That's how it would be written and spelled, Ndovu. Now on the concept side, we have the exact same conceptualization. A large gray animal, big ears, long snout, white ivory tusks, and it weighs a lot. Exact same concept. All right. Those two tied together or glued together, which is the link, forms the Kiswahili sign. Ndovu. All right. So that's an example of Kiswahili. Let's go to another example. Now we're going to show an example of a Duluo sign, which is another language. And when I say language, I mean another system of signs. Remember, a language is a system of signs. Always remember that. Now, on the form side, we have a sound pattern of liech. Liech. That's how it sounds. But we spell it in writing Liech. Liech. So that's the sound pattern and the written pattern. Either one of those is the form element of the linguistic sign. On the concept side, which is what we conceptualize, is the exact same thing. A large gray animal, big ears, long snout, white ivory tusk, and weighs a lot. Okay? But glue these together or link them together or tie them together, and now we have a Deluo sign. Okay? So a Deluo speaker will understand if I say the word liech. Why? Because they have that same sign in their psyche, in their mind. All right? So let's go on to the next one. Now we have a Rodney Kemet example of a Rodney Kemet sign. And as a side note, FYI, the language of ancient Egypt is called Ra-Ni Kemet. You may hear people pronounce it slightly different. Some people say Ro-Ni Kemet or Ni Kemet. Just understand that we're saying the same thing. That is the ancient Egyptian language. That's the indigenous name given to the language. All right. So here's an example of a Rodney Kemet sign or an ancient Egyptian sign. All right. On the form side for this example, we have the sound pattern Abu. Abu. When it is written, it has 4 characters or glyphs. All right, or teep as they're called independently. We have the chisel, the leg and foot, quail chick, and an elephant. All 4 of these spell the word that's pronounced Abu, by at least as we pronounce it today. So either one of these make up the form side of the linguistic sign. On the concept side, the meaning side, which is the signified. Remember, the form side is the signifier, and the meaning side is that which is signified. So the same concept: a large gray animal, big ears, long snout, white ivory tusk, and weighs a lot. Same concept. Now, if you glue or rope these two together, it creates a Rodney Kemet linguistic sign. All right. So those are 4 examples. So I just went through 4 examples of showing the linguistic sign of 4 different languages. All right. So now let's look at all 4 of them together. And something should kind of emerge in your mind about this. So remember, a language is a system of signs. And now we know what a linguistic sign is. It's an entity that's made up of 3 elements: form, meaning, and the link between the two. Form is also the signifier. It consists of sound pattern or written pattern. On the meaning is that which is signified, and it is the concept that is grasped in the mind. Okay? So we have that understanding. We just went through 4 of them, and now we're looking at all 4 of them. Now, I want you to notice that out of all 4 of the linguistic signs that I shared, all of them had the exact same concept or meaning or signified. Okay? The exact same thing. But notice that the form side is different for each of the 4. Elephant was one, Ndovu is another, Liech, and Abu. Okay? These sound different and they look different. Okay? They're written differently and the sounds are totally different. Elephant does not sound like Ndovu, which doesn't sound like Liech, which doesn't sound like Abu. They're completely different. But yet all 4 of these forms in their respective language is pointing to the exact same concept. So what should emerge in your mind right now as I explain that? What should emerge in your mind is the concept of translation. So now we can ask the question, which should be an obvious answer now. What is translation? So translation is the communication of the meaning of a source language, text, or speech by means of an equivalent target language, text, or speech. Translation depends on knowledge of two or more languages, which means you have to have knowledge of two or more system of signs. Okay, so let's go back here. So let's stay here for a second. So Liech, which is a Duluo linguistic sign, Undovo, which is a Swahili, and elephant in English, and we had a fourth one, Abu, for ancient Egyptian. All right. As a matter of fact, let me add that on here right now. We had the fourth one, Abu. We'll just spell it that way, and my spell check is definitely trying to correct me when I don't want it to. Stay put. There we go. And this, we're going to call this Ronnie Kemet. So we have these four here. All right. We have these four. Now, what I can do is I can put an equal sign in between each one of these. So Liech equals Ndovu, which equals elephant, which equals Abu. The reason why is all four of these are matching on the concept side. Now remember what the concept side, let's go back. The concept side is the signified side and its meaning. And remember what translation is. Translation is a semantic endeavor. Semantic, the very word semantic means meaning. So you're trans means to move. So you're moving meaning from one set of system of signs into another system of signs. That's what you're doing when you're translating. And so what the objective is in translations is to match meaning to the corresponding forms. So you take language A, and you take, I see the spelling. My spell check is trying to, so that's the minor thing, what I'm trying to say here. So you're trying to take meaning from one language over to the other. So your objective is to match. That's what you're doing. A translator, a person who translates, which is a translator, their objective is to match the concept sides between different systems of signs called a language. So this will be the example for elephant, the concept of a large gray animal, big ears, long snout, white ivory tusk, and weighs a lot. All four of these would satisfy that objective. So now I could say Liech is equivalent to Ndovo, which is equivalent to elephant, which is equivalent to Abu. Now, the way that we say it in general in everyday talking, we'll say Liech means elephant. We even say it that way. Mean, when we say means, that's semantic, that's translation. Liech translates to elephant in English. The Duluo word Liech translates to elephant in English. How and why? Because it matches concepts on the concept side. That is the objective of translations. All right. And so this is very, very important. One, it broadens the spectrum of communication between human beings, because just because you're part of one speech community, you're not isolated in the world anymore, because once you gain knowledge of another system of signs, aka another language, now you're able to communicate meaning from your source language into your target language by the matching of concepts. So we could do this the same thing with, let's say, the Spanish word casa, and we'll say casa means house. Now, only reason we say that is because as an English speaker, that's the only person that would say something like that. Casa means house. So you're bringing the linguistic sign, a Spanish linguistic sign, over into English. Because on the other side of the English sign of house is a concept of a square or rectangle enclosure that you can go into with a door, with a roof, with windows, etc. And that equivalent concept or conceptualization to Spanish speakers, they have the form casa. So the English form is house, House, and the Spanish form is casa, Casa, casa. But the concept side matches. So we say casa means house in English. Or a Spanish speaker will say house means casa in Espanol. Okay, so hopefully everyone follows that. Now, all of this may seem a little bit trivial, and it may hint of it being obvious, but trust me, it's not. It only hints to being obvious because we communicate all day, every day to ourselves. We talk to ourselves. We talk to our loved ones. We talk to coworkers. Everybody, friends, enemies alike. Everybody communicates in some form or fashion. So this may seem trivial in that sense because of that, but it is absolutely not. What I'm discussing here is so taken for granted and so misunderstood that it should be obvious, but it's not. All right. Now to put this to use a little bit more and go into the actual question, what is a word? Because, like, what do you mean, what is a word? We use words all the time. All right. So now, in order to get into the practical aspect of this and to answer the question, what is a word? We should already know what a word is by now. It's really a linguistic sign. Okay. But how it manifests in our understanding, our day-to-day understanding, that's what I want to talk about a little bit. So first, let's start with grammar. Okay. In general, grammar is the rules of a language. And remember, a language is a system of signs. Don't forget that. So grammar is usually looked at as the rules of a language. All right. So let's just read it. So what is grammar? Generally, grammar is a set of structural rules governing the composition of meaningful elements into words, phrases, clauses, and sentences in any given natural language. There are two basic varieties of grammar. All languages have some of both kinds, but depending on the type of language involved, there's a lot of variation in how much of each kind they have. One part of grammar is called morphology, a term which means the study of forms. From the Greek morph, meaning form, and logos, meaning word, study or research. It was originally used in biology to denote the study of forms of plants and animals, but since the middle of the 19th century, it has also been used to describe the type of investigation that analyzes those basic elements used in language. So you hear, morphology, morphemes. Morphology has to do with the internal economy of words. So a word like bookkeepers has 4 morphemes. Now, we see this as a single word. We'll call this a word, bookkeepers, but it has 4 morphemes when you analyze it. It has book, it has keep, it has a suffix er and a suffix s. And these 4 morphemes put together. So a word like bookkeepers has four morphemes and is put together with morphology. The other part, remember, one part is called morphology. The other part is called syntax, a term which means to putting together or in order, from the Greek syn, together, and tassin, which means to arrange. It has to do with the external economy of words, including word order and agreement. Syntax deals with how words are combined into phrases like the young boy, or clauses like that he was reading, and sentences like the young boy knew that he was reading. Thus, grammar as a whole is the superordinate term which allocates the insides of words to morphology and their outsides and combinations to syntax. Hence the use of the term morphosyntax, which explicitly recognizes the important relationship between the two. So all of that is to explain what is grammar. And again, grammar is this rules, structural rules of a language. So what does that mean? That means, and I always say this, I always repeat this many, many times, that we, or any given person, any individual, does not know a language. They don't know a language until they are competent in the grammar of that language. Okay? You can't claim to know a language until you know its grammar. All right. Now, so visually, just put a visual, y'all, if you want to take a screenshot of what grammar is. Grammar is two things at once. It's morphology and syntax. Morphology is the analysis of the structure of words, and syntax is the analysis of the structure of phrases and sentences. Morphology is the internal aspects of words, and syntax are the external aspects of these words and their arrangements. All right. So now let's get back to what is a word. Get back into that. Now here's to illustrate why that's even a question, because it seems a bit silly, but here's why it's a question, to kind of put ourselves in check, humble ourselves a bit. So on the screen now, I have lexeme versus word form. All right. And I'm going to explain that because it's going to tie into what is a word. So it is generally assumed that what we call a word was always a regular and identifiable form. Determining if a linguistic unit is a word or not depends on the language involved and has proven to be difficult. What is a word in one language may be two or more words in another language, or part of a word in yet another. Dictionaries appear to simplify this by categorizing a language's lexicon, that is to say its vocabulary, into an ordered, which is usually alphabetical, an ordered list of lexical entries. However, in English, for example, the question is, do we consider move, moves, moved, or moving as different words or different forms of the same word? So y'all get that question? Let me get my arrow out here. Remember, in English, the question is, do we consider move, moves, moved, and moving? Do we consider them different words or different forms of the same word? Now that should make you think now, because at first, that's nothing to really think about, and we think we understand that. But when you ask that question, it should make you like, wait a minute. That's a good question. Are they four different words, or are they different forms of the same word? So now, this demonstrates why the notion word is actually a foggy and ill-defined concept. Okay, so hopefully everybody in the chat, like I said, I'm going to engage the chat in a few minutes. Give me a few minutes, and I'll gauge the chat. But hopefully you're already like, wait a minute, that's a good question. Now, a distinction must be made between the notion of word in an underlying abstract sense that we call a lexeme. So that's what a lexeme is. So we have to distinguish the notion of word or what we mean by word as an underlying abstract called a lexeme, or the notion of word in the sense of a realized surface or concrete word as used in the as used in a sentence that we call a word form. So hence lexeme versus word form. We have to make that distinction. But there's an issue here. And let me see if I can, if I have something to illustrate that issue. Give me 1 second here. Okay, let me finish reading this and then I'm going to illustrate even more, okay? So hence, a word form is a word with meaning and form, which is a linguistic sign. While a lexeme is a family of word forms that are inflectionally related. Now that sounds like it says a lot, but a lexeme is a family of word forms that are inflectionally related. All right, and I'll elaborate a little bit. The word form chosen to represent a lexeme in dictionaries is called a lemma. All right. If you all are familiar with people using, especially in studying Egypt as of late on various different YouTube channels, you'll see that people will use a dictionary database and corpus database called the TLA. It's abbreviation TLA, and the TLA will list its entries and number them, and they're called lemmas. And so this is what why they do that. That's what it's actually called, a lemma. So the word form chosen to represent a lexeme in dictionaries is called a lemma. And that's important because what I instruct people on when it comes to dictionaries, especially English to foreign dictionaries, foreign languages, so for English to Egyptian, any Egyptian dictionary to English dictionary that you get, it's only going to have a word form that represents a family or a lexeme. And a lexeme is a family of word forms, so it's only going to choose one to represent the entire family. They don't list them all. They only list one. And that's what people need to realize and don't realize a lot. What I find, a lot of people don't know that. So all the words in a particular language is not in the dictionary. Okay, I want to make that very clear. So if you pick up an Egyptian dictionary, that dictionary is not going to have all of the Egyptian words in it. All right. They choose one that represents a family of words. To continue, the names of lexemes are conventionally written in small caps. So if you ever want to document, if you're ever writing and you talk about a lexeme, it's going to be in small caps. Okay, so it's going to be the same size as small case letters, but you're going to use capital letters. Capital letters in the same size as small case. So that's why you see here small capitals. And they do that to avoid confusion between these two notions of words. So in the previous example, the surface or concrete words move, moves, moved, and moving, those four, can be qualified as word forms of the lexeme move. Okay, so to answer that question, these four entities, these four items, are actually the same word. If I understand word to be a lexeme, so they're four different word forms of the same word, which is the lexeme move. So now the word has two different definitions. And that's what I'm going to illustrate right here. So if you look at this sentence right here, all these words represent the word move. I have the word right here and the word right here. This definition of word is speaking about word forms. This use of the word is talking about lexeme. So I'm saying all of these word forms represent the lexeme move. Okay. So we have on the surface for, and the underlying abstract, which is what a lexeme is, its move. All right. So hopefully everyone follows that. And I elaborate on all of this much more in the actual classes that we hold on the Egyptian language, because you have to understand, you have to have a full grasp of this to really, really, really get into the ancient Egyptian language. All right, effectively. So let me show you an example of what was meant here when it says that what a word is in one language may be two or more words in another language, or even a part of a word in yet another. Okay, so remember that. I'm going to demonstrate that now. So what I'm going to use is the language or a system of signs called Kiswahili. And I'll just read what I have on the screen. In many languages, what appear to be single forms actually turn out to contain a large number of morphemes. The analytical process of isolating morphemes is called morphological analysis or segmentation. All right. For example, we have the following forms in Swahili. So we have the word nitasema. We also have another word, nilisema. We have another word, utasema, and a fourth word, ulisema. Now, notice I said we have one word, two words, three words, four words, but are they actually different words? So as we now should know that these are four word forms for the same word. Or put it more technically, these are four word forms of the same lexeme. All right? So now, but let's look at what we notice about these four items or four words. So when we look at this, this is what we can deduce from this. So the first form, nitasema, appears as a single word in Swahili. But now notice that when we translate, when we bring the meaning from Swahili over into English, it takes on three. So this is a single word in Swahili, but in English, it's three words. I will speak. Nitasema is a single word, but in English, it's two. I spoke. Utasema and ulisema, same thing. They're single words in Kiswahili, but they're multiple words when we bring it over into English. So what does that mean? Now, what that means is that when you translate, in translation, remember, translation means to move meaning from a from a source language into a target language by means of matching concepts to the respective forms. Now, when you do that, you have to then apply the grammatical rules of the target language. This is why I say, you hear me say, it's all the time, and I said it a little while ago, you do not, or a person does not know a language until they know its grammar. Let's say it another way, in light of what I'm talking about now. A person really will have a hard time and a big challenge in translations, in trying to translate, if they don't know the grammar of the target language and the source language. Because to translate, you have to have knowledge of two or more languages, the source language and the target language you're trying to translate into. You have to have knowledge of both of them in order to successfully translate. And to say you have knowledge of a language is to say you have competency in its grammar. So this is a perfect example. Nitasema is a Kiswahili, I have to know the linguistic sign for that. Then I have to know its equivalent linguistic sign in English by matching the concept sides. Then I have to apply grammar, the appropriate grammar for the respective language. So in English, I have to know the grammar, which includes morphology and syntax. Remember, we already broke that down, to successfully translate this to I will speak. The only way I can do that is I have to know the grammar of both in order to know to do that. So let's continue. So the first word, nitasema, appears as a single word in Swahili, but it consists of a number of elements which in English are realized as separate words. I will speak, for example. Performing a morphological analysis on the forms, we can compare all forms systematically and establish the following facts. All right. So we can look at all four of these and establish some facts about it by analyzing its morphologically. Okay. So bullet number one, we see that sema occurs in all four forms. You see sema, 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 sema. And we can deduce that it is the lexical morpheme which has a meaning that corresponds to the English word speak. Notice speak, spoke, speak, spoke. Sema, 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 sema. So that's number one. Number two, by comparing the two forms in the first row against the two forms in the second row, we can see that the morpheme ni, got ni, and then u, corresponds to the English pronoun I. And the u for the over here corresponds to the pronoun you. See, you, ni, I. 3. Likewise, with the same comparison, we could see that the ta is a future tense grammatical morpheme and the li is a past tense grammatical morpheme. Why? We could see ta, will. Li, past tense. The past tense of speak is spoke. Okay? Number 4, we see that there are 3 morphemes in each word. So now we know 3 morphemes in each word. Ni, and then ta, and then sema. Ni, then li, then sema. U, then ta, then sema. U, then li, then sema. So we could break these up into 3 morphemes. 3 morphs. All right? So hopefully everyone follows that and the importance of that. All right? And what else is there? Back to communication. So, a quick review. So what is a linguistic sign? A linguistic sign is an entity that's composed of 3 elements: the form, meaning, and a link between the two. The form is the signifier, the meaning is the signified. The form consists of either sound pattern or written pattern. The signified is the concept, that which is grasped in the mind. Okay, and then you have to have the link between the two. All right. Now, in reverse, if you break the link, so let's say you break the link. If I break the link between the two, now these are free agents. Now the meaning is separated from the form. So the form is a free agent. And when it's a free agent, it can be attached to a different meaning and repurposed. So how does this apply to the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system? Is in what I discussed yesterday or the previous show, is when it comes to the glyphs being used as phonographs. And I'm going to see if I have one available right now to share with you all. A good example. What is a good example? Do I have a good example to show? Let's just look at this Egyptian one. So let's take, for example, for illustrative purposes, this second glyph right here. So we see we have 4 glyphs on the screen in the word Abu. Let's take the second glyph to make it easy. This glyph is a picture of a leg and foot, the bottom part of a leg and the foot. Okay. Now, the form is what you see. And the meaning, the raw pictorial meaning, is that of a leg and foot. So this particular sign used that way will convey the meaning of a leg and foot. So when you see it, what's meant is leg and foot all day long. Why? Because that's what you see. It's a picture of it. Now, if you divorce or cut away the link between the form and the pictorial meaning, now the form becomes a free agent. Now you can use the form and connect it to a different meaning and allow it to function differently, as it does in this word. This leg and foot here does not mean leg and foot. This leg and foot in this word is only being used to represent a consonant, which is a voiced bilabial plosive, aka the letter B as in boy, the B sound. So this leg and foot is stripped from its meaning of leg and foot, and now it carries the meaning of the consonant B in the word Abu. All right, so hopefully y'all follow that. And so we can take the glyphs and take any glyph and show that it's divorced from its pictorial meaning, meaning that the link was severed, and then is repurposed to be used as a representative of sounds in the language. So the meaning, on the meaning side, it becomes sounds. So we have the form, which is that which is written, and its meaning becomes sounds. And they're then linked together. And that particular process of slicing a pictorial form from its pictorial meaning is called Rebus. It's called the Rebus principle. Now, I went over that in the previous video. So for more, check out the previous video. I'm not going to go back into it now. But now, if you've watched the previous video and watching this one, it should make perfect sense. Now I'm linking the two together. All right, that's the Rebus principle. When you cut away a pictorial form from its pictorial meaning, you cut away that link that's gluing those together, and you repurpose the form to a sound. Now you have executed the Rebus principle. All right. So I think I've covered it. What is translation? So what is a word? Now we should know that a word is a very elusive concept. There's two senses of what a word is. A word can be referred to a word form, or it could be referring to a lexeme. Okay. What is translation? Translation is the movement of meaning from a source language into a target language. And the only way you can translate something is to understand the linguistic sign, because you have to match concepts to the respective forms. Then you have to govern that outcome by the appropriate grammar in the respective language. And there's no skipping any of these steps. If you don't know the grammar of both languages, you have to say you don't know how to translate, or you're not going to be successful at translating. And then everything is up in the air and it's guess. I'm going to guess. That is a wide open room for error. All right. Even when you know the grammar of two languages, and you can do your best at matching concepts. Even in doing that and knowing all of that, you can still make mistakes. So imagine if you don't know the grammar and you don't know these concepts about the linguistic sign, it just increases your chances of making mistakes exponentially. You are 99% chance that you're going to make a mistake. Whereas if you understand and competent in all this, then it's the reverse. You'll have a 90+% chance of having success. Okay. And I don't know about you all, but I'm in the business of being successful. All right. So I think that's enough, and I don't want to drag this on too long. So now we can open up Q&A if there's any Q&A. So I know I've been talking a lot and I was not paying attention to the chat. So I'm going to switch on over to the chat and bring back Emiket into the play here. So Emiket, I know you were probably checking out the chat and everything at the same time. Was there anything that I should address first? So, but I'm gonna officially open it up for Q&A. So if you have a question, make sure you at Sesh so that it could stand out and I can address it. So we'll spend a little bit of time addressing it. It's been an hour and 20 minutes. I'm trying to keep these videos short so that, because people have short attention spans. We all do. I'm not even gonna put it on other people. We all have a short attention span, so we want to get right to it. All right. So, any questions? Are there any questions?
I think we can address the latest one first. That is Shesmu's question. Can the pictorials help with the meaning sometimes, especially determinatives?
Okay, so I work backwards. So Shesmu asked the question, can pictorials help with the meaning sometimes? That's an excellent question, and I'm glad you asked it because in what I was presenting, I did not cover when they can actually help out with that. So to answer your question, when we're speaking about the Sesh Netcher, which is the Egyptian hieroglyphic writing system specifically, when the glyphs function. Now remember, let me back up. All of the hieroglyphs, and this is something that everybody has to burn in your mind. All of the hieroglyphs are pictures of something. That's what they are. What? What are they? They're pictures. So in that sense, they're pictographs. They're pictures of natural flora and fauna and even man-made objects known to the ancient Egyptians, indigenous to the ancient Egyptians. You're not going to see polar bears in the glyphs. You're not going to see tigers. You're not going to see any Asian animals and plants that's over there in the far east in the glyphs because they are indigenous in that particular environment of the ancient Egyptians. So that's number one. That's what they are. Now, here's where people have to really, really pay attention. Although the glyphs are pictures of things, they don't convey their pictorial meaning all the time, or actually rarely. In other words, the glyphs, when they're used within the writing system, they function differently. They function as phonographs or logographs or as classifiers. So I'm going to repeat that. When the glyphs are used in the language as part of its writing system, they're used either as phonographs, meaning they represent sounds in the language, aka consonants, or logographs in the language, aka words, full words within the language, or three, as classifiers. So now let's focus on the classifiers, and this is going to answer your question, Shesmu. When the glyphs are functioning as a classifier, that's when the pictorial meaning helps, because it helps to classify the meaning of the word into the ontological categories in the worldview of the ancient Egyptians. All right. So, for example, let me see if I have examples. Let me share something else. I'm going to bring up an example to illustrate what I'm saying. Give me a quick moment to let me switch over to a couple of examples, if I can do so very quickly. And can I do it quickly? I should be able to. You know, I have tons and tons of slides, but I don't want to confuse anyone. I may have to just create a new one. And I think that I will do just that. Give me 1 second. But I can talk and do this at the same time. So remember, the glyphs can function in one of three ways: phonographs, logographs, or classifiers. Now, you hear me say classifiers, but the more popular term for classifiers that's used is determinatives. And determinatives, calling them determinatives is a description or how people describe it that is really on a decline in scholarship and in the cutting edge of scholarship. Egyptologists are on a decline, and people are preferring to call them classifiers because that more accurately reflects what they actually do. All right. And boy, looking for an example here. So, all right, I'll give you an example of a word. And I was just now going over this before. All right. So if I can share my screen again right here and make it big. So Shezmu, this is going to give an example of the answer that I gave you. All right. So and I'm going to use this glyph here. So we're looking at this glyph here. Okay. This is a glyph that is a picture of an enclosure with the opening obvious. So look at it as the floor plan of an enclosure. All right. That's how it's described. So that particular glyph is a picture of something. And I just told you what the picture is. Now, when it is used in the first example, as you see here on the screen, it is functioning as a logograph. And remember, logograph, the word logo comes from logos, meaning word, graph from grapho, meaning to write. So it's word writing. So this, used in this way, it represents the full word pair, which means in English, house or an estate. Okay. And this stroke that you see under it is correctly called a logographic stroke. Okay. It indicates that the glyph that it's attached to represents a word in the language. And this word happens to be pair, which means house. Okay. Now, the second example, it's no longer being used as a logograph. It's used as a phonograph, which, as I said earlier, it represents sounds and not the picture. It has nothing to do with the picture. So the picture meaning was severed, as I was explaining before, and it takes on a new concept to refer to sound. So in this example, it represents two consonants, the P and the R. The P and the R, those two consonants. And this word, the full word happens to be Peret, which means it's the second season of the ancient Egyptians' calendar, the season of emergence, or the season of growth. When they planted the seeds and things started to sprout out, to emerge, comes from the root word pair, which means to go forth, to come out, go forth. All right. The last example is the word cheneret or cheneret. You see it as the last glyph is being used as a classifier, aka determinative. That's why you see it over here. And in this sense, so now Shezmu, in this sense, the pictorial meaning does help and it helps to determine the meaning of the word, which is why they were nicknamed determinatives in the first place. They help determine something, so they're called determinatives. But the better description is classifier, because the help that you're getting is coming from the class or the category of words that it belongs to. So the category here is that of habitat. So the classifier is used as a classifier or a determinative. It denotes habitat, something that is habitable, that you can get into, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a camp. So this word means camp. Kinneret means camp. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. All right, so we can move on to the next one. And Emicat, I would need your help to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Was there any question prior to that one that I may have missed?
Um, well, there was it wasn't even a question, it was a note way prior, but I don't even think I'm going to go into that. But Asar did I also note something. He said elephant, Ndovu, and Abu are the same word diachronically.
Okay, okay. Let me speak to that, because now that opens up another conversation, and I think that's a definite worthwhile conversation of why that is. But a brief statement about that. First of all, I want everybody to understand diachronic. Diachronic means to traverse through time. Synchronic, diachronic and synchronic have the word chronic in there. It has from chronos, which means time. Synchronic, when you do a synchronic analysis of a language, what you're saying is that you're choosing a point in time to analyze the language at that particular time. A diachronic analysis of a language is to look at that language throughout time, and you can compare multiple languages diachronically or synchronically. And that when you do that within the study or the field of historical comparative linguistics. Historical linguistics, self-explanatory. History, historical. Comparative, self-explanatory. You're comparing. So historical comparative linguistics actually does that. And so what Asar is saying is that those words are diachronically the same word. And we need to unpack that and explain that. So that would be good to do a whole show on what that means more in detail. So I'm just kind of giving y'all the overview so you'll know what Asar is saying about that. Anything else, Emicat, before that? But I'm gonna go down. But it was anything before that?
No, it was just notes. It was the only thing I saw that I really don't think we want to get into was from
Well, if you do,
Lucas.
if
Uh,
then
and then other than
I'm
that, it was nothing else.
okay. So I'm asking you, was there anything else? I don't. You have to
Oh,
tell me
okay.
what
Prior
not
to
to
that,
do.
no, no.
Okay.
But after that, we have Shesmu. So
All right. So
really good question.
I'm gonna go on down. So I'm caught up now. I just want to know from you, when I wasn't paying attention,
Okay, gotcha.
what was there before.
I think there was a question before that from Shesmu. Was there? Let me see if that was the one.
No, the one I went from Shesmu's.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, no. You're right. You're in the right.
Okay. All right. So Shesmu asks, what is the difference between pictorials, iconographs, and ideographs or ideograms? Okay, the difference between them is their function. Their function. Because an icon can be a picture of something. An ideograph can be a picture of something. Remember, graph means to write. All right. And so it's all on how they're functioning. That's why there's no such thing as a pictographic writing system. You cannot write. You cannot have a writing system where the graphemes or the graphs, which are that those characters, be they pictorial in nature or not, you can't have a language, a writing system that is based around conveying pictorial meaning, because everyone knows this saying: a picture is worth 1,000 words. Y'all remember that, right? So, since a picture, when they say a picture worth 1,000 words, that means that a picture can be looked at and interpreted in 1,000 different ways. And since that's true, it would not be effective or efficient to use pictures in their pictorial meaning for a writing system, because the goal of a writing system is to visually represent speech and to convey meaning. But if it's 1,000 ways to interpret all these different characters, then you're defeating the purpose. Okay, so to answer your question, the difference between all of that is how it functions. Pictures convey pictorial information. Icons are symbols that represent different things, and we usually say icons in terms of like logos. Like nowadays, in today's time of social media and graphic design and things like that, you'll hear logos or you'll hear icon, and you'll hear them used interchangeably. And then ideograms is really for ideas and concepts. Ideograms, people are used to ideograms, really are graphs that represent ideas or abstract concepts, things that are not tangible, like the word heat. I can create an ideogram to represent heat, even though heat itself, I can't take a picture of it. I can't take a picture of heat, but I could use a symbol of fire to convey the concept of heat. Because fire we could take a picture of, but heat we can't. Love, the icon or the ideograph of a heart can represent love. Now, logograph, which is what you don't have in your question, a logograph operates the same way, but it functions, it represents a word within a particular language. The logograph itself doesn't convey its pronunciation, but when used within a language, it conveys a particular word, hence the word logos or logogram. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. All right, I want to keep on going. Then let me remind everybody, try to add Sesh so your question can stand out, okay? And then at the same time, let me do this. I'm gonna put the panel link in the chat because we can go. What time is it? It is 1:37. Go a few more, but let me quickly put the panel link in the chat. All right, so hopefully y'all will see that and get to that. Okay, so let me answer this question. So Shezmu, do the scribes sometimes take the liberty to play with signs and meanings? I'm not sure what you mean by play with them,
What
but
he means is things like paronymy.
oh, that's what he said later.
Correct.
Okay, well, of course, the answer is yes. So that's definitely there. But hopefully you're saying that understanding what paronymy is. So I'll be interested in to make sure you understand what paronymy is, because there's all kinds of play. That's why I said I don't know what you mean by play, because there's many ways that words are quote unquote played with. And one of the most popular ways words are played with is they're stripped from their literal meaning and they're given a figurative expression. And we call those metaphor, assemblies, tropes, all kinds of figurative. And that reigns supreme, especially in ancient Egyptian literature. When I say a lot of ancient Egyptian literature is filled with figurative expressions. Okay, along with all the different varieties. So you have puns, punning, you have paronymy, you have all of that. Okay, so but the answer is yes. All right, let's keep on going. Um, make sure I'm not missing anything else. Oh, I'm caught up. I'm caught up. All right, I'm caught up. So I guess I think I have done my job. Anybody have any questions? I put the panel link in case you want to come on and have a short discussion about a your question. So Shesmu says words that sound the same but have different meanings. Okay, let me briefly discuss that. So Shesmu is definitely asking all the questions today. But let me go into that real quick. Let me
Is
switch
that
back over.
homographs that he's asking about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna say this again, but I do know that Shesmu did say that he's just asking rhetorical questions. But we do have videos that we've kind of gone over this. I don't know if we went over this yesterday, but we definitely do have videos that we've gone over this.
Right. Okay, so I want to explain that. So let me put my screen back big and huge on the big screen. All right. So the question is about words that sound alike. What was the question? Yeah, words that sound the same but have different meanings. Those are called homophones. All right. Phone, the word phone means sound. So the word homo means same and phone means sound. So words that have the same sound is homophones, but they have different meanings. So on the semantic side, so now with our discussion today, people should be able to better elaborate on what a homophone is. Okay, so now let's go into that a bit. Now, remember, a linguistic sign, aka word, has three elements: form, meaning, and a link between the two, or the rope that connects the two. All right, whatever that, you could say glue or rope, but it's a link between the two. Now, the only way that you'll have a homophone or a homograph is within a particular language, not across languages. Only when you're in a particular language do homophones, real homophones or homographs exist. When they're across languages, they're something else. Okay. And now, Imicat is correct. We went over this in greater detail in previous videos. Definitely check out our archive. Maybe Imicat, you could post the link to it. It's called the mechanics of language, or what is a word, something like that. But now, what we're talking about here are homophones, and I wanna explain that. So where is my homophone? Right here. So here's an example. So we have homonymy, which is homophones and homographs together, but specifically what Shesmu asked about are homophones. Now, in these examples, within the language of English, which, remember what I said, a language is a system of signs. So within the system of signs we call English, there are many, many homophones and homographs, or collectively we'll say homonyms. There are a lot of them. All right. So here's an example. So we have a homonym, which is both a homographed and a homophone, because this is spelled identically and it is pronounced identically. Left and left, L-E-F-T, L-E-F-T. So these two represent both. Now, the first one has a meaning of past tense of leave. The second one has a meaning of the opposite of right, the left-hand side of something. So this is an example of a homophone and homograph, which is a homonym. So these will be a set of homonyms. Okay, a pair of homonyms. All right. Now, but based in light of what we're explaining today about the linguistic sign, now we can actually see what happened. So we see that the form side is identical, but the meaning side is not. So these are actually two different linguistic signs. But on appearance, they don't look like two different ones. They look the same, hence homograph. Sound pattern wise, they sound the same, hence homophone. But they're actually two different linguistic signs, two different ones. Okay, so that's what that is. Now let's move over to a cross language situation that I mentioned earlier that's not called homophones or homographs. Technically, they are cross language homonymy. And people play like that's where you get kind of jokes and stuff, and it's just fun to play with. It's entertaining, but it has no linguistic kind of value there. So here's an example. So here are three Deluo words, and because Emiket Deluo is Emiket's mother tongue, I will have her, if she don't mind, if you could pronounce these three as in the Deluo language, the first, second, and third, right here. If she's there.
Oh, sorry, I stepped away for a minute. Okay. Yeah, the first one is or.
Okay, and it means what in English?
Send.
Okay. Next one.
Sin.
And it means what in English?
Sadness.
All right. Third one.
Got.
And it means what in English?
Mountain.
All right. So everybody see that. Now, these three words right here are the Luo signs. But English, on the form side, English has these forms as well, but they're attached to different meanings in English. Or in English is a what do you call it? Or this or that. When we say this or that, conjunction, junction. What's your function? Y'all remember that cartoon? So or is a conjunction in English. Sin in English in an English sign would have to do with the concept of bad, evil, doing something wrong, wrongdoing, bad or evil. And got as an English sign, the form side of an English sign would have to do with the word have, possession. Okay? To possess something, to have something. But notice these same forms are completely different in Deluo. These are homographic, and even the way she pronounced them, they'd be homophonic or homophones, but across languages. Like I said, this is something that is entertaining, but it doesn't mean much. It's just something to say wow over. But here's another entertaining one. So in Deluo, Emiket, if you're there and you don't mind, if you could pronounce these two words in the Deluo language, right here.
Okay. Anyone mature.
All right, one more time.
Anyone mature.
Agnone mature. Did I say it correctly?
Yeah, close.
Okay.
Yeah, it's close.
Let me hear you say it one more time.
Anyone mature.
Okay. Now, that's how you say that in Deluo. Now, in English, if we see that's written right there, to English speech community, we will say anyone mature. Anyone mature. and it carries a different meaning. We're saying anyone mature. So we'll use that in a sentence to say anyone mature can come to the party. Anyone mature can buy alcohol. Anyone mature can drive a car. That's how we use it in English. But tell everybody, what does it mean in Deluo?
So it means I have stepped on and broken him, her, or it.
Okay, so it means something totally different. Totally different. So anyway, I just thought that's entertaining because we have cross language homonymy that really becomes entertaining like that. It means something totally different, and that's why what's also interesting and kind of crazy is what's a curse word in one language may be a normal used word or part of another linguistic sign in a different language. That's perfectly okay, and vice versa. So an English word that we say out loud all the time, when a foreigner hears it on the sound pattern, the form side, that's going to trigger to them a curse word, a vulgar word, and things like that. And they say, oh, no, don't say that. But it'd be perfectly fine. So anyway, that's just an example of that. But I think I answered all those questions. Was anything else after that? So Shesmu, hopefully that that answered your questions there. All right. Now, just to do a quick review, because I don't think anyone. If you have any more questions, feel free to type. We have at maximum 9 minutes. All right, we're gonna close out at the 2-hour mark exactly. But just quickly, it may spark some questions. So remember, the takeaway here is the linguistic sign. Let me go back to it. The linguistic sign. This is very, very critical and very important to pretty much all things linguistic. And what I said at the beginning, if you're just tuning in, is that when I say linguistic or linguistic sign, people tend to relegate it over there in the corner, away from them. Like that's something over there. But we shouldn't do that, because linguistic signs are part and parcel of our everyday life. All human beings communicate in some form or fashion, and we do so by way of linguistic signs. All right? It's critical. And we have to understand what these signs are to be better communicators. Okay? And so remember what communication is. Communication is the encoding of meaning. Because we're not telepathic, we have to encode meaning, which is something that is mentally conceptualized. We have to put it inside of a form or a vehicle and then transmit it over to the next person or people. And to successfully encode and decode that process, that is what communication is all about. And understanding the linguistic sign helps us to perfect that process. And as I said before, this is my personal view, and through my personal experience throughout my lifetime, 80 to 90% of all disagreements and problems are due to some form of fashion in miscommunication. And I could just keep the scope in relationships. If you look at relationships, most relationships have problems because of miscommunication. Okay? And so understanding this, I'm only using it as to show that this is something that is very, very applicable. Even right now, as I'm talking to you all, we're all using linguistic signs. In order for you to understand and comprehend what I'm saying, we have to share signs. And remember, the word concept means to grasp within the mind. Same thing with comprehend. The very word comprehend means to hold within the mind. And so what's in my mind transmitted to what's in your mind has to be done proficiently so that there can be no miscommunication and a full understanding. That's what it's about. And how this all applies in terms of ancient Egyptian and the writing system and the language is that once you understand this, then you will start to understand what's necessary to successfully talk about ancient Egyptian text, ancient Egyptian culture by way of its text, and so on and so forth. Because now we won't, we will be able to reduce the amount of errors that are possible by people who don't understand these very, very important fundamental concepts. Okay. And like I said, this is only a brief discussion. This is probably the 10th time that I've gone over stuff like this. And I'll continue to go over stuff like this as long as I continue to see people who may need to have this understanding. All right. So we all have to understand that. This is very important to translations. It's very important to understanding what dictionaries are, how dictionaries do not contain all word forms. They choose one word form per lexeme called a lemma. That's what the dictionary entries are basically. And then foreign dictionaries, like from one language to another, they're not really the same type of dictionaries as in a single language dictionary. For example, in English, if you look up the word house in an English dictionary as an English speaker, what we're calling a definition is going to explain what a house is. But if you look up the word house in an English to Egyptian dictionary, it's not going to explain what a house is. It's just going to give you the best guess at the equivalency of concepts. So house in English is going to find its equivalent as pair in the ancient Egyptian dictionary. But it's not going to explain what it is, though. So we have to understand what these dictionaries are and how they're just tools. They're just tools that help you to do all of these investigations and analysis. Never stop at a dictionary in your research and analysis. Okay? And they're tools. And when you use them, use as many as you can because they are helpful tools. Get as many dictionaries as you can. But just understand the strengths and weaknesses, the power of these dictionaries and the lack thereof. All right? And above all, be honest with yourself and acknowledge your own strengths and your own weaknesses. Acknowledge what you know versus what you don't know. All right? If you're ignorant of something, that's not the end of the world. It's okay. That's you can solve that by seeking knowledge, filling that ignorance gap with knowledge. It's okay not to know something. I don't know is like one of the phrases that's like a taboo with some people. People have a hard time simply saying, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know. And that's it. So hopefully we can take these pointers and lessons and do better collectively, and it will better your studies. All right. So were there any other? I don't see any more ats. I see Shesmu. Shesmu, miscommunication is a big issue. It's a big problem. All right. Last thing I think Shesmu says, I don't think the definition of house at its basic level has changed much. Well, I just hope you see the point of me bringing up the word house. My point is that language to language dictionaries are not the same kind of dictionaries as a single language dictionary. A single language dictionary produces the lexical inventory for that particular language, and it will explain the concepts. That's what it's there, is explain the concepts. And some concepts have more than one sense. Like when you look in a dictionary and it has definition 1, definition 2, definition 3, these are different senses of a particular entry. But the foreign dictionary's objective is to provide best estimated equivalencies, whereas a single language dictionary job is to account and document the lexical inventory for the language and to elaborate on the concept, the popular concept at that. Remember, dictionaries are a popular consensus tool. Remember that. If you never heard that before, you heard it here. But I didn't invent that at all. Dictionaries are a popular consensus tool. All you have to do is investigate how are new words put into dictionaries. They do it based on usage, statistics. And it's easier today than it was, decades ago and stuff like that. But it's based on usage. So that's what they are. And meaning can be changed over time based on the preponderance of its use. For instance, the word gay, Gay, the word gay in its original sense is totally different than the way it is used today. All right. It used to mean happy. Now it means somebody that's interested in the same sex and so on and so forth. All right. Different. Now, so remember that for sure. Dictionaries are a popular consensus tool. All right. We are at that 2-hour mark. So, Emeka, you have any last words? Yes, no, maybe so. All right. I guess not. So, with that, again, I appreciate everybody tuning in to hang out. And our next live. So again, the way that we're doing these lives is we're going over brief lessons, trying to share information, being informative. Hopefully people can have some takeaways and learn something or even refresh themselves on things. And then we'll kind of go every other live stream. Next one may be just an open forum where we can discuss any of the lessons prior, be it from 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or last week or yesterday. So that's the kind of pattern that we're trying to establish here. All right. So anyway, hopefully this helped everyone out who's listening. And if you have any questions later, look for us to go live or email. Now remember, class is open. It's designed as a self-paced study. You can register and join and sign up at any time you want. But we go into a lot more about these things that we're covering in these quick live stream lessons. All right. About the language from a beginner's level. And also we get into the intricacies of the grammar, which is a whole ocean of information that I'm excited to share and teach. All right. Been doing it for over 10 years. I don't know how many years exactly. I always say over 10 years, over a decade. But it's fun and it's very interesting. But with that, I am going to say Shem Imhotep and see y'all next time.